que es animador 2D y que tiene bueno, pues una trayectoria muy larga para su joven carrera. Ahora nos lo van a presentar. Vamos a tener a Cabeza Ferreta Studio, que trabajan hibridando mundos y técnicas y que tienen un trabajo muy apasionante, que también nos van a contar después. Y por último, a Máté Horesny, que nos va a presentar el libro La imagen animada, una historia imprescindible, que acaba de sacar recientemente y que va a ser su primera presentación pública. Y para presentar a Máté Horesny tenemos a María Madero, que es directora de animación, animadora, y que tiene también ya una trayectoria muy importante y que fue ganadora de la 6ª edición de Prime Animation. Y bueno, pues como el lema de este año es de Yavi, también tenemos esta conexión entre invitados incluso. Así que os dejo con María, que nos presenta a Máté, y escuchamos a continuación su charla. Muchas gracias por venir.
Hola, buenos días. Estoy aquí para presentar a Máté. Muchas gracias, Sara, por invitarme a presentar hoy. La verdad es que me hace mucha ilusión volver a vernos todos, ¿no? De forma física, es algo muy competito y siempre se echa de menos. Y bueno, yo voy a presentar a Máté Horesny y esta charla que se llama Thinking in Black and White. Máté estudió animación en la Budapest Metropolitan University, donde realizó el cortometraje Jack Rabbit's Own When We Do, We Lose Our Self-Confidence, ¿no? Que pudimos ver en Prime Animation 7 y es donde lo realmente. Y desde entonces pues, ha seguido investigando en el lenguaje del blanco y negro sus historias. En estos momentos lo tenemos en la Universidad Politécnica de Valencia, desarrollando su siguiente proyecto, gracias a una beca Erasmus Plus. Así que todavía lo vamos a hacer para aquí unos meses, que si queréis preguntar alguna cosa, lo tenéis bastante accesible. Y nada, en esta masterclass vamos a poder entender su parte. Y nada más, sin más presentación, procedo a la propuesta.
Hello everyone. The microphone is working? No? Yeah. Okay. So, my name is Máté Horesny. I'm from Budapest, but maybe you know that. It's really hard to identify myself because I'm a half student and half professional. So it's like I'm just starting my life in animation. So I bring in something like, of course, my presentation is going to be in black and white, and the thinking of black. So the first part is what I wanted to talk about, like in black and white world. I wanted to give the thinking of black and whiteness, and I wanted to show some impressions about black and white. And it's quite interesting nowadays in the films when people thinking in black and white. Does anyone see the Parasite film? Yeah, and it's really interesting because the Bong Joon-ho made two types of Parasite. One is colored, one is black and white. But in the meantime, it's quite interesting for me. Of course, they're just not taking the saturation off, and it's all in black and white, and it's really ugly. No, that for me, that thing is not black and white thinking. For me, it's different. And what I'm going to show is going to first we start with the photograph, after the live action film, and after that we go into the animation and the graphic design, how to think in black and white. So first of all, what I think for introducing, I wanted to show something. Maybe it's much more nicer than I will talk about in poetic way of black and white. Does anyone know the Leica camera? It's a German camera manufacturer. And that camera is a really interesting one what the engineers make in Germany. This camera is a monochrome camera. They only can use just black and white. And it's really interesting because this camera manufacturer is always working, they always finding the way of doing essential photography. So it's like, mostly it's like a bit like owning a Jaguar or a Ferrari. So of course it's for professional photography, but this one is a bit different because only working with black and white. And it has a commercial, what I'm going to show it to you, and they are really nice talking about photography, being photography in black and white. So let's start it. Just a moment. Well,
nothing is more colourful than black and white. Blood red, green grass, blue water. In the coloured world, there is no space for dreams or reverie. The colours order, the eyes obey. A serious and predictable cell with silver bars. Imagination's death row. The black and white world is anarchistic. In it, norms exist only for those who decide to invent them. Black becomes orange, maroon and purple. White turns yellow or lilac. Black and white is all the colours, whichever inspiration decides. In the prison of colours, black and white is the sunbath. Leica M monochrome. Free yourself from colours.
That's the last part which I really love about that commercial is the prison of colors. Black and white is a sunbath, and it's yes. I really love black and white and thinking in black and white, and I started with photography as like when I was 6 years old. I see the blow-up movie, and I really wanted to do the same thing. And also the photography to thinking in composition, because I think that one of the most important things to thinking in black and white is the composition. First is the composition, and that's why I'm using different ratios for composition, because when we're doing a film, of course we're using 6:9 or 4:3, but in photography it's quite different, because of course you can use the 35mm, but it has much more different ratios for the photography. And these ratios are mostly a medium format, large format, and these cameras are way more heavier than the normal usage, so it's weighs around 5 kilo or more. And these cameras are really good exercise. So everybody needs a hobby. For me, it's like photography, and it's also why I'm shooting on film, because these are film types, and also ratios of the film types. I mean, if you're using these cameras, they are more ratios than this one, but differently from films, like if you're making an animation or a live action film, of course. And these ones I mostly, and because of I'm using film, and why film? Not because it's so cool and back in the days was everything was better. No, because if you're using film, you have a trust, and you have to do really precise. So if you're thinking like 4x4, 4x5, you have to think around these little corners also. So it's really interesting. So you have to counting in head to what you wanted to do or what you wanted to think in a picture. And after that, when you get the laboratory results, the negatives, it's always like, oh, we have done it perfectly. Also, it's a really good thing it's a really good practice. I mean, photography is a really good practice to doing black and white thinking. You can improve your stuff. So that's why I think it's really important to doing photographs. For exercising, everybody's doing. I'm not really a sketchbook type of people. I mean, of course, at home I like to draw, but in the meantime, I'm not really using it like some people love to draw in frame or the traveling peoples, and I'm sketching those people in the street. But I prefer to do in photographs. And yeah, and of course, I'm not a serious photographer. I bring some photos that are not really a serious one. I'm not a serious one, but I really love to do it. So it's always made me happy. It's like people love to go fishing, hunting, or swimming, or anything. So everybody needs a hobby. For me, it's a photography, what I said before. And of course, as a photographer, I have three types of genre which I really love: to take a photo about myself, about landscapes, and about portraits. Well, the original things. These are the 4x5 pictures. I always shooting myself to show it I'm not faking it. These one are digital. Yes. These are also made by a digital Leica, and it's really good. Just it's like a little compact camera, and you can walk everywhere in the street. I was in Porto, and that's why I made it. And they're you're just walking around, and also like sometimes these composition because the Leica is built up that black and white looking. So it has a dynamic black and white feature, and also the couple of there, it was just randomly showed up. So I was really happy about that. Oh my god! So I do it the photographs, and that was a lot. I mean, maybe I like it that picture. And of course, these are my friends. And these are the portraits we film also. Not that we are writing digital, but yeah. So I like to photo shoot these type of people also. It's quite interesting. And if you're using, there's mostly in the film industry, there are two types of films. One is the panchromatic, which is used nowadays, and back then it was like the orthochromatic. Orthochromatic, it has a film, the light cover, the lighthouse, or it's a brand new film nowadays, and there's two guys arguing in the island. And they are trying to, because I don't think they use orthochromatic, but they need to get closer to orthochromatic. Why? Because the orthochromatic film blind to the red, and it's really interesting because that if something is closer to the red, like your overall skills, it's going to much more cooperish, and it's really interesting. So it's like it's also an orthochromatic film in that guy. That was in prison for 9 years, but that guy was really cooperish, like or something. But no, the film is like that cooperish. So it's really interesting to do it. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to talk about, the photograph, because you should go out and go to the forest and do something, because or doing landscapes or anything, because it's really good it's a really good practice to thinking in composition after that in films. So, or you can use it as a built-up thing. So that's really good for me, I guess. All right. Now we're going to I made a presentation about two things, and one is made the presentation in two types. One is the daytime, one is the nighttime, because I think there are two different things. You have to think in black and white two differently, daytime and nighttime. Maybe the daytime I'm getting a bit how is it called? Shorter, because I have more stuff in the nighttime. Yes, and just shortly about the viewing films or in black and white, we have a joke about a teacher who also doing a feature film, and he making a documentary film, animation documentary film. But it was really funny because he told me like when he started first in black and white. And some people says like, oh, you shouldn't do black and white, you should do in colors. And it's really interesting because the audience, it's like you have a full audience in a movie theater. And he said, I made a documentary, of course everybody, half of the audience are going out. And he said, it's going to be black and white because everybody is going out. So but I think it's, we have to change that in some way, because that could be really interesting. And also that animation, who Jackie doing, he making black and white with around 4 color, but these are grays. and I'm mostly working only in black and white. So I'm trying to get rid of the shades of gray. So I'm trying to feel thinking clearly in just only in black and white. Because sometimes it's the simplest, it's the best. So I'm trying to not using post-production, I'm trying to solve anything in graphic design. So first about daytime. Daytime, I bring two films for daytime. One is my film, the Jacques Rampage, or When Do We Lose Our Self-Confidence, which was the first BA film, but that's how I started black and white thinking. But first I'm going to show one of the famous Hungarian director, and he really thinks in black and white. He made it the Hungarian Western. And sorry for that, there's no subtitle, but I think it's better to look in the pictures, so it doesn't matter now what they're talking, but they're not going to talk about it. So I'm going to show, and after that we can talk about that. Sorry for that. The Spanish, I found in the Spanish title.
New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down.
Whoa. Yes, and this is Berat. Did I say it correct? Yes, author. So, and then tell you something later. Let's see first. Yes, so talk about the daytime. Yes, so what we saw is like the young show, after that, I mean, he mostly working in black and white. And it's become his trademark, that thinking. And and that's I'm maybe in the end of the presentation, and that's what I wanted to give it to us to give you all about that to make your own trademarks in black and white, because there's tons of solution and forms and thinking about black and white. And Yangchun has this type of composition and thinking. So always you have to find your own trademarks in animation or in live action films. Yeah, and yes, I can show it's like that. I made it a film, and this is Jacques Rampage, or When Do We Lose Our Self-Confidence. I started with making gags. I made it by using set, but I using as a drawing gags, and after that I collected like 5 or something like this type of gag, and I said to myself, I should do something with it because I don't want to make a gag film. I wanted to give some meanings of it. And in dramaturgy, I made a circle for, and so the story starts, how is it ends. And I can show it scene from it, but mostly I use, so this film was made by, this film is made by daytime. And most of the pictures are in the white is more dominant than the black. But in the meantime, I really wanted to make a nighttime film, but I was too young for it, and I'm thinking I have to wait and find the perfect literature or story or a novel for it, and maybe but I will show that later. But here it's like, okay. Sorry, thank you. So anyway, yes, I'm going to show a scene from it, if I could. These are mostly in the daytime. Don't worry. Yes. So. Yeah, that was while loading. I can talk about that, but it's something. But yeah, that was my first film ever, and that was the first part when I started to think like, I should do anything in black and white with a high contrast, and I used as graphic design. I tried to find my own graphic design, and I find it in get through the Santé, which is a French graphic novelist. Does anyone know Nicolas Nicolas? It's a really famous French, and they're talking about Little Boy, and that graphic designer, I really like it. So you said that when it's fast, what's going on? Maybe I reload. Refresh, yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, because it's no. That's so much. Let's move on. So, that was it about the daytime part. That was the chakra pitch for when we lose our self-confidence, and that was my first film of BA and so yeah. And after that, we're moving to the night time. Of course, everybody waiting for the noir and blackness and darkness, these things. But for me, it's like yes, we can of course back then everybody using the noir, the black and white as a mysterious darkness and anything. But in here, I bring some interesting. First of all, I'm going to show other video. And in Hungary, my teacher using chalk animation. Does anyone know heard about the chalk animation? Or no? Yeah. And it's really interesting because he's the only guy who doing in Hungary the chalk animation. I think he maximalized he really maximized the thinking of the chalk animation, and he also used post production for it, so it has the depth of field. First of all, it's really interesting with the drawing in black and white at the night time, doing in black and white, because you can stop the time. So if there's no clock or something in a film, it could be a dream view, like Kurosawa dreams or something. So it could be timeless, and it's really interesting. So you're not thinking about like it could be daytime or nighttime. So it could be changed a bit differently. That's really interesting. And my teacher made, I'm not so short, but I'm not going to show the full film. That's a 20-minute long film. I'm going to shoot 2 minutes from it. And I think it's really interesting piece, and also in Hungary, to do it in really clearly that thinking. I mean, the chalk animation. Resolution killing me.
I really don't understand. We made such a great couple. I talked to him. He knew all my secrets.
There's more to a relationship than intellectual harmony. Did you feed him properly? We get a call every single day from this neighborhood, but why exactly from here? I don't get it. We've been waiting so long and we're growing roots. We're becoming one with the car, and still nothing is happening. You're gonna spill the coffee all over the car like you did the last time.
Just one, please. Just let me have one. Oh, at last. Oh, where have you been all this time? Good doggy. Where have you been all this time, good doggy? Good dog.
I've never said this out loud before, but the way he resembles my poor departed husband, it's unbelievable. If you look at his profile, he's the spitting image of him.
That's it. Go on. With the sense, snare. Good doggy, snare. Well done. I know you don't let it down.
Why can't you drink your coffee like a normal person?
Nice. I'm sure. Come on. Doing well.
The way he looks at simply him, even his posture. Daddy, where are you?
I told you not to do it. I can't believe why do you have to do this?
My parents had trained me the habits of industry from an early age. After school, I used to procure dogs from my father's factory and helped out my mother. There were days when I managed to collect 7 or 8 stray creatures.
So yeah, that was my name is Buffer Bean. And it's really interesting. Maybe sometimes we see in the lights it has the flying mode, and we can know it's not, of course, it's nighttime, but it has some timelessness for it. So there's the time is stopped for me. I mean, it's really interesting to thinking like this, and also like thinking about there's no shadows exactly, but also we somehow we see these shadows. I mean, football or maybe just I don't know. I wanted to talk about black and white in after the buffer beam. It has a really famous Belgian wood cutting guy. I mean, he's painter, and but we mostly is working with wood cuts. And these wood cuts are start to thinking a bit. It's really interesting. I can show it to you. So first, that guy, his name is Franz Mazeril. Before Frank Miller, before Jose Munoz, he was the guy who made a school of the noir, and not exactly the noir, but he making the black and white comic painting. He working in the 20th century, and he making social things, and it's really interesting because he mostly works in at night, and it's all about the same and everything. And that's how he thinking. And for me, it's really interesting how he used the lights, especially if I'm started doing a film or anything. I always I had back at home Franz Mazzarino album, and I start to looking at how the Grandmaster solved the problems. And like as you see in the middle, sometimes it's just the little details make something really big. Or for me, it's like the end of the line in the middle, how he used these end lines, or make the guy in the table. Like Franz Mazaril, it has a really famous, and I am one of my best graphic novelists, and his name is Jose Munoz, and they always working with Carlos Campaño, and he making, I think, one of the best comic book for me, but that's my opinion. But sometimes people really love the Sin City, but the Sin City is a problem for me. It's like too American and too strict, too correct, too realistic. But Jose Munoz drawing really interestingly, he's drawing realistic. He draw, so he's drawing really realistic, but also in the meantime, he really likes how he draw, and he always, of course, using the black ink. And I think for me, it's the best way to thinking in black and white. He has a really own style for it. And sometimes, if you're looking closer, I mean, of course, it's you have to check the two albums and everything, but you see, it's Jose Munoz, maybe see Franz Mazzarino at some point, they connected to each other. But yeah, that's a classic noir. I mean, that guy is thinking really interesting in black and white, because sometimes it's how I talk about it, it's really important, the details, and you have to think it's always simple, always, and like how you see it's the lights in the background. And that's really interesting thing, because you're just doing some lightful movements, but we can see the 60-foot long New York buildings, and we see in definitely in the park, but these are just like the little dots and lines and squares. And so it has using the style of the backing always. I really love the way how do simple, but in the meantime, it's really aggressive and really wide. That's what I'm looking for always. And also in the code, how he just slightly use the lightning in that night. So for me, that's the perfect way to do it in black and white comics. for me, because it's a surreal, grotesque realism for me. In the film industry, there's a really famous scene about the people making a love scene in a car in a backyard, and if someone can do in a love scene in a backyard in a car while they imitating rain, he can do anything in film industry. But if someone can draw like this in a morning piece, someone like this, he can draw anything in life for me. So it's like there's a perfect thinking and the perfect ratio of anything about comic booking, and also like the physics scene, or they say anything about that. How would it look like? And because for me, it's like one of the perfect. It's really funny why it's this, but for me, it's like when I saw in the first time that line, that page, I say to myself that guy is a genius about black and white. He maximalized, I think, the background painting. So for me, the grandmaster is always Jose Munoz. And we are turning to my film, which is quite interesting, because this is my master's degree film. I made it last year. Not last year, I finished in June or something like this, so it's quite fresh. This film is also, of course, playing at night. Of course, what is in the social media, but the whole film is all about. So I'm from Hungary, Budapest, and it has a really interesting underground writer whose name is Attila Hazai, and he's making the perfect Eastern European thinking. And of course, his writing is really strict, and it's a really grotesque realism. So everything is a life story, but it's always turning to an absurd, really weird situations. And of course, I wanted to also make some. So I also, when I'm making the film, I also made a plus for it. So it has a conversation, and I changed the conversation because mostly in Eastern Europe, people are talking about by ourselves, like to ourselves. So if I'm talking, so there doesn't want to do. So you're always talking about so it's really interesting characters, how we doing it, how we write, and the main place of the film is the buffet. It's in the 90s of Budapest. It has a buffet culture for people sitting down there and they drinking in the morning and after drinking in the night. But of course, they always drinking hard liquor or beer in the morning and the other night. So the conversation is going there. I bring some layout how I done it, and after that I can show it to how it look like. I bring some layout how I made, and after how the end results looking. So this is the layout how I made. And so that was the one of the characters I really feel bad, and that's why he turned into a fish. And after he vomiting himself, I turned into a normal person. And that was so yeah. It was quite funny to do it because also in the shadows and the details, how can I make it? It's really hard to do metamorphosis. And it will be also it has a talk about David Silverman, who is a famous Simpson making that scene about Homer turning to he had a really bad drug trip, and the folks are somehow like a ghost spelling around. And he said like, oh, I sent to South Korea the layouts, and God who knows what I made. And the guy after that they figure it out. So I was also like sending that layout one of the best Hungarian animator, and he said like, oh no, not again. So it was like really funny. But so yeah, it's like how it was really hard to think how he turned into a fish, and after that how he only thinks. Yeah. But yeah, the most hard part is the shadow part. How can you solve the shadows? And after in the meantime, how you can show directly what we saw. So it's really interesting. So yeah, but let's see the results. Well, So yeah, that was it. Oh, that was the first one. So yeah, it's so yeah, that's how they do it. So the guys do the twins. And I can show another one. It was quite funny because that one I made for the guy who always holding the handle and really arguing and shouting. Uh, that guy, I wanted to make, he was in his mind while he fixing a thing. He always thinking about what's going on in his mind, and he of course he trapped in his mind. And when I made that layout, I sent also do you know that does anyone know that Nokia game is Snake? Of, and I sent as a reference like I wanted to move like as a snake in a game, and that's how I made the layout. It's starting to do everything, and after that it has the first animation, but it's not a lot of in between, but it's okay. So that's how. Yeah. So that's how we made it. And after the end results, we did mouth and mouth positions. So yeah, that was the scene for it. And also I can show a little scene about the film. How does it look like? We made it away. Okay. That's how they look like. They how we talk. So, and I wanted to that one what I wanted to show. Also,
Ez itt tényleg valami házas félmányék. A véletlen itt. Ez a rohan csak kinyílik. És ide ömlik a csőd a földgáz, akkor hatalmas baj lehet. Ez pedig, kérem szépen, ide kellene maximálisan közíteni. Hű van, ezt talán mégsem kellett volna megbolygatni.
so yeah, that was lesser of two. Then the film title, sorry for that. The film title is Lesser of Two Evils. Mostly when I'm making animation, I'm a bit funnier independent because I always doing the background, the character design, the layout, and maybe a bit animation, of course. So I always do it anything by myself. And in that film, it was really interesting to do it because I wanted to do that nighttime, and that was the nighttime part of it's a bus crash to the buffet. But yeah, it's, that nighttime I really wanted to, and that's finally I found Attila Hazai, that underground writer, novelist, for this film. And it was really interesting to do it because I wanted to. It was really interesting and really fun to do it because I put tons of techniques on it, and I made it also. I doing some experiments in the film, so not just only 2D TV based animation. We're using paper animation and also 60mm animation. So it was quite interesting to do it in a master for master film. So yeah, that was like the paper one. We are making blue forms with black and white paper. So yeah. So that was what I wanted to say. Being black and white or trying to be black and white. But I think the most important part is the simplest is the best. And as Yoncho or as Jose Munoz or Franz Nazarier, everybody finds his style. So you should find your own style in black and white. And it's not necessary to do real. You can do anything in black and white. So I think it's one of the most colorful world of being black and white. So that's what I wanted to say about the presentation.
Thank you very much, Máté. It was really interesting, your talk. No sé si tenéis alguna pregunta para hacerle alguna duda, algo que le queráis comentar.
Just answer the question.
Puede ser en castellano sabiendo que quieres.
Have you done something in color?
Yes. yes. Before the BA, I'm doing anything in color in university, but I think I don't really like. Sorry for that. And sometimes I wanted to say faster than I could. For me, it's, I really like the pastel colors, but I don't think it's my style to do it in pastel colors. You could use really nice things on color. And also, I really love to use in films. So I really like to use colors. There's no problem with colors. But for me, I wanted to grow up for the masters of being coloring. You know, for me, it's like I prefer to. I wanted to improve myself in graphic work, and after that, I wanted to use in colors. After that, I wanted to. But in the meantime, if you're working with film, like film material, I really prefer to use color films. And also it has really nice colors of using like motion film, like 60 millimeter, and you can push more colorful work things. Yeah. But before that, I worked color, yeah. But yeah, and also, yes, and one thing, I was working in a feature as a character designer, we have to think in color. So it's also, we have to do in color. So yes.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yes.
You mentioned a few times graphic design, and I don't know if you have any reference more related with this kind of workflow. I mean, do you have some inspirations more recent in pure graphic design?
About the films?
Yeah, or your work in general.
I mean, my reference is mostly the Franz Mazuril and Jose Munoz. That's these two guys, but it depends a lot. So what I'm making now in Erasmus, I'm using Goya Oscar pictures as the not exactly clearly copying them. I mean how's it called when you're using as dramaturgy the Oscar pictures. But now I'm really into Goya now. I'm into thinking in Goya. That's now. But mostly it's Alex Sinner and Jose Munoz and Franz Mazuril. That's these two guys enough for me for now. But if I find something interesting, I do. I'm always looking for, but mostly I'm looking really European comic things. I prefer that because it's much more lively, and I prefer that one. And I think if you work in films in Europe, you have to think as a European. And you should be probably a European, not like not being making Marvel films, because I mean there's no problem with Marvel or anything. So, but I think it's if you bring in Europe, you have to do much more nicer thing because everyone has the culture for here for that. I don't know. It's a good answer.
Gracias.
Vale, te lo voy a preguntar en castellano porque me resulta un poco difícil explicarlo en inglés. Mi pregunta es, a la hora de hacer las animaciones, ¿piensas antes en una mancha o primero
Yeah, it's really good question. I think that first, sometimes it's thinking the lines first, but after I'm using when I'm making now the new film, I'm thinking about the black, how the black is look like in a picture. So first I draw it with lines first, but after that I'm trying to make tests about the shadows, how much is the shadow or enough or not. So yes, at first I do with lines. And after that, using the black. But if you're doing night scene, you put in tons of black. And also, really interesting thing about in live action films, in the cinematographer, one of the biggest cinematographer in Hungary, who is Pilata cinematographer, Gabor Medved, he said, you have to use the most for line shots, you have to use the more lines. So it's really funny. Yeah, yes, at first I'm doing with line, and after I think but in the meantime I'm thinking in shadows, yeah. I don't know if it's enough, it's a good question. I answer for
Yes.
¿Alguna pregunta más que queréis hacerle aprovechando que está por aquí? Vale, sí, si no sabéis que, bueno, vamos a tener las 3 charlas, luego vamos a hacer como un pequeño aperitivo para poder charlar también con los invitados y entre los que estamos aquí, así que podéis también acercaros y hacerle preguntas también. ¿Vale? Bueno, pues muchas gracias.